Hi class, and welcome to our lesson on ratios in the real world, part 1. Today we're going to be talking about taxes, tips, and discounts. Then we're going to be solving some problems that engage all three of these topics. Let's get started. The first thing you need to know is that taxes are mandatory financial charges from the government that are used for public funding. So if you think about it, when you go to the store and you buy a snack for $1, and your total comes out to be $1.27, that extra 27 cents is actually a tax that goes back into our government that's used for funding things like schools, parks, and other public entities. Next are tips. Tips are essentially a percentage of a service that is given to the server. And oftentimes we see tips in restaurants. So typically, in a restaurant, you may be asked to give a 15% tip to your waiter or waitress, which is where you would just calculate what 15% of your total cost was, and that would be what you would tip your waiter or waitress. Next, let's talk about discounts. Discounts are a deduction from a usual cost of something. So when a price drops, that's a discount. So in stores, we may see signs that say 20% off or 50% off the lowest price. These are examples of discounts, and oftentimes these come in the form of percentages. Last but not least, let's talk about commission. Commissions are a percentage of a sale that the seller makes. So for example, at a car dealership, every time a dealer sells a car, they may receive a commission. And if their commission percentage is 20%, then that means if they sell a $20,000 car, then they get 20% of that total as their payment. Now, there are two things that I want you to remember as we start our journey of solving these problems. The first thing I want you to remember is to use the buck strategy. Remember that you need to box the question, underline important information, circle important vocabulary, knock out the unimportant stuff, and solve. Remember that not all the problems are the same. You have to read and understand what the question is asking you. Secondly, a lot of these problems are going to deal with percentages. So when it comes to changing a percent to a decimal, remember that we're just going to move the decimal place over to the left 2 times, and then that's going to give us our decimal version of the percent. Now let's jump into our first problem. Problem number 1 says, Taylor buys a new MP3 player for the price of $45.50. What is the total amount his credit card is charged if the sales tax is 7%? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to employ our buck strategy. Okay? So I'm going to read my question. I'm going to box the question. The question asks me what is the total amount if he's charged a 7% sales tax. So that means I'm going to have to add my price to whatever the sales tax is once I find that out. Important information means that I know what the cost of the MP3 player is, and I know what the percent sales tax is. Okay? Now that I've kind of gotten a good foundation on what I'm looking for, I am now going to change my percent into a decimal. So, in order to do that, I'm going to remember that 7%, if I move the decimal over 2 times, 1, 2, then I'm going to put a little 0 in that nook, and that as a decimal is going to be 0.07. Okay? Now that I've changed that to a decimal, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the cost of the MP3 player by this new decimal that I've converted a percent to. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to set it up. 45.50 times 0.07 equals, and when I put that in my calculator, I get 3.185. Now, I know I'm dealing with costs, and I know with costs, I only deal with the tenths place, so I'm going to make sure I round to the tenths place. Okay? If I round to the 10th place, then this number is going to be $3.19. Okay? Now that I have the amount for the sales tax, because essentially 7% of this amount is $3.19, if the question asks me what is the total amount, including the cost and the sales tax, then the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add my amount and I'm going to add the sales tax. So, last thing I'm going to do, 450 plus this sales tax amount equals $48.69. So what is my total amount? $48.69. And if I had to put a step 4 to this, add the tax to the cost to get the total, which is here. Okay? And that's my answer. Now let's move to the next problem. Question 2 says, your parents took your family out to dinner. Your parents want to give the waiter a 15% tip. I'm going to underline that because that's important. If the total amount of the dinner was $42, what should be paid to the waiter as a tip? Okay? What should be paid to the waiter as a tip? That's the question. Okay? Now remember, when we're talking about tips in restaurants, a tip is an additional amount that you would give your waiter after you pay for the total dinner. And it's based on a percentage. In this problem, we are dealing with a 15% tip. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change that 15% into a decimal. You can go a few steps ahead of me and see if you get it right. If you said that 15% is the same thing as 0.15, then you're correct. Now that I have the tip percentage, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to multiply $42 times 0.15. Okay? Multiply the cost and the percentage decimal. Okay? When I do that, I'm going to get $6.30. The question asked me what should be paid to the waiter as a tip if the total cost of the dinner is $42 and the tip percentage is 15. This is the amount that I should tip my waiter based on this situation. Okay? Notice that I was not asked what is the total amount of the meal after I add in the tip. I'm just asked what should be paid to the waiter as a tip, and so this is the answer that there is. Next, a $350 Gucci jacket is on sale for 20% off. First of all, I need to know how much the jacket is, and I see 20% off. How much should you pay for the jacket? Okay, well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to convert my percentage into a decimal. Okay, this is going to be the same thing as 0.20. Okay, but if you know anything about decimals, you would know that this is the same thing as 0.2. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply 350 times 0.2 in order to get what this 20% amount actually is. So once I do that, the amount that I'm going to get when I multiply that, and you can put in your calculator, is going to be $70. Okay? You may even get 70.0, which is the same thing as $70. Okay? So what that means is I can essentially replace this 20% off with $70 off. Okay? Because 20% of 350 is 70. Alright? Now that I know the amount off, the question asks me how much should I pay for the jacket. And so what I'm going to do, if I know that something says it's a percentage off, I am going to subtract $350. I'm going to subtract 70 from that. And my final answer is going to be $280. This is my new discounted price. Okay? This is my new discounted price. And this is how much I should pay for the jacket if it is 20% off, which means, once I did my calculations, that it is $70 off. Okay? Now, before you move on, let me state this. Please remember that when we see percent off, this percent is just talking about how much of this number are we talking about. Okay? So we never want to look at the percent as a actual number. Okay? This percent is just going to tell us, in this case, what chunk of this amount are we taking away. Back in our second problem, this percent was telling us what amount based on this total should we pay to the waitress. And back in our first example, this is telling us about the amount that we are taxed based on the total price of this product. Okay? Now, on the back of your notes, there are 3 additional problems. I want you to either work independently or work with a partner, and I want you to go through these problems. There is a problem here that deals with tip, but you're going to have to make sure that you read the question and understand what the question is asking. There's another question that asks which coupon you should use to get the best deal out of this situation. So that means you're going to have to figure out how much you would pay if you use the $20 coupon off, or how much you would pay if you use the 30% off coupon. Those are 2 different situations. And when you figure out both of those, then you can determine which one is the best deal. Last but not least, there is a problem that talks about commission. And if you remember in our first notes section, a commission is a percentage of a sale that the seller makes. So pretty much you're going to do the same thing. You're going to take 10% of this, and that is going to tell you how much commission that Reagan gets on this sale. Okay? Once you finish with these problems, I want you to get your answers checked by me, and then you can feel free to move on to the next item of business. See ya!